Good afternoon. Let's get started here. Welcome everyone to the 2018 Living Treasures Recognition Ceremony. That's right. My name is Bob Thompson. It's my honor and privilege to be your MC for today. And before we get any further, I would ask you to silence your phones, just like I hadn't. Today we want to honor 3 new living treasures, but first I want to recognize those who have been recognized before. And so could the people who are here, most of you are wearing your medallions, would you please stand up and let us recognize you for that? You are indeed treasures. Thank you so much. We're here today to celebrate 3 individuals from Los Alamos, people who have made outstanding contributions to this unique community, this very different community. They are in alphabetical order: George Best, Cheryl Pongratz, and Ruth Williamson. The Living Treasures is a small corner of a much larger sandbox that celebrates the history of this area. These include the Los Alamos Historical Society, the Manhattan Project National Historic Park, the Bandelier National Monument, Los Alamos National Laboratory Museum and Archives, and many others. So let's all celebrate our history today, and today our living history. This Living Treasures program was begun in 1999 by Rosalie Heller. It was an offshoot of the Santa Fe Living Treasures, which had been going on for quite a few years before that. It was brought here by Rosalie, who was herself a Santa Fe Living Treasure. And Rosalie was crucial to every step of the way of getting this wonderful program established. At first, there were at least 2 ceremonies annually, but now you do 1 ceremony each year, recognizing 3 citizens. I wish to mention briefly about how these people are selected. It isn't quite that we have a Ouija board and ask the spirits who we should select. It is probably the main criteria is this intangible notion of their impact on our community. Now, in order to be considered, they have to be nominated. That's a crucial thing, because sometimes people will come up to us and say, well, why didn't you consider such and such? And we'll have to say, because they've never been nominated, and that's a crucial thing. So first, the nomination. So if you have someone, nominate them. If they've already been nominated, this will reinforce the nomination that is already on the books, and we don't get rid of nominations. We continue through them. We have a list of at least 30 people that we consider each year. I'm ad-libbing here and off my script, so I'm sorry. Where am I here? I'd like to ask you consult our webpage about the deadlines, which is at the end of November. So that we select people in the beginning of December. Once they have accepted their nomination, then that is public knowledge. But the acceptance is something that we insist upon too. There have been a number of people who have turned down the honor, and for whatever reason, we have to accept their request for privacy. Little note about the finances. The main expenses of the Living Treasures Board involves this ceremony. It includes the programs, the invitations, the flowers, the medallions, the reception, and so on. Kyle Wheeler has contributed her time to do the interviews, and Jim Gautier has, since the beginning, done each of the wonderful portraits, and he has contributed those. The Los Alamos National Bank has contributed contributions, and monetary, and their wall space at the Los Alamos National Bank here in Los Alamos. So we very much appreciate that, and we appreciate the presence of PAC 8 here recording the procedure. If you wish to make donations, we will gladly accept those. There are envelopes available in the narthex area back here, and you can put them in the mail or in a basket that you will find back there. We are a 501c3 organization, and so your contributions would be tax deductible. Next, a word about the timing. I'll do the introduction of the newest treasurer, and then for the next 10 minutes or so, we'll see how that plays out. We'll invite family and friends to make comments about their treasurer. We'd ask you to limit yourselves to 2 or 3 minutes. In the past, we have had Dale holding up signs saying you have 1 minute, you have 30 seconds, sit down, and nobody watched Dale. So this year they said, Bob, you're it. And so if you feel me breathing on your shoulder here, you know it's about time to sit down. We need to be out of this building by 5 o'clock, so that'll be easy if we move along. Then, when that has played itself out, we will ask the new treasurer to come up and make comments. There's no limitation on their time. Well, okay, there is. Again, the breathing on the shoulder thing will make a difference. We'll have a short, very short stand up and stretch break between the second and third presentations. Now, I'd like for you to be alert to what needs to be done here, and if the place is too warm or too cold, I'm not sure what we do about that. But if you can't hear, especially the people in the back, please let us know. I've been instructed to just speak loudly and the microphone will pick things up, so I don't need to get real close, but I also just need to speak loudly. Kirk tells me that if I am too close, I might get feedback, but if you're too far away, then you're not going to be able to hear anything. So just speak loudly, as if the microphone wasn't there and you had to project to the back. I'd like to make a point about who is us, who is this board. And I'll ask the board of the Living Treasures to stand up, and let's not have applause until we have gotten to the end of the list here. But the board includes Dale Arnink, Karen Brandt, Becky Ortle, Sarah Rochester, Ann Hayes, Pauline Schneider, Kyle Wheeler, Sally Wilkins, and me, Bob Thompson. And the ex officio member is Jim Gautier, who lives in Santa Fe. It's a great bunch of people to work with. Could the board stand up? It's a wonderful working board. I show up once a year to do this, and so I'm kind of a public face for this, but it's the rest of them that really do all of the work. So let's get going. Most of the following information actually is from the wonderful interviews that Kyle Wheeler did, and I'll be quoting her. If you've not read them, get online and quote them. We have some reprints in the back, but the reprints from the Los Alamos Daily Post and from the Los Alamos Monitor, and we really appreciate the support that they give to us. So now our treasures. Usually we save the best for last. I'm so sorry, George. I'd be willing to bet that you have put up with any kind of joke that you can think of all through your entire life. But you know what? You started it. You started it when you told Kyle that you were the second of 5 boys and that you always felt that you were the second best. So today, George comes first in the alphabet, and so you are the best, or at least the first on the program. George grew up in the Windy City, Chicago, so named for its politicians, not for its weather. George was a Boy Scout, as was his son Guy. One of his first exposures to New Mexico came when he came out west to Philmont, the new scout ranch near Cimarron, New Mexico, and asked George about his experience of crossing the Ottawee Crossing Bridge as they were coming over to visit the Poyet Cliffs. George graduated with a BS degree from Purdue University. That is a Big Ten university, by the way, in 1932. Now, that year may stimulate some associations there. There was something going on that year, and that was a big world war. And so George graduated with a physics degree and did what many people did. He enlisted in the Navy. George was puzzled, though, at Purdue by the disappearance of quite a few people in the staff and in the graduate program, and they just kind of disappeared out of there, and he didn't know what happened to them. He became a commissioned officer in the Navy, and there, with his aptitude in science, he became familiar with the newest technologies in use by the Navy. Just as for many of the SEDs, the Special Engineering Detachment here in Project Y, that experience was very important for George's future. He was stationed in places like Washington, D.C., Harvard, MIT, and specialized schools in San Diego and Pearl Harbor. He's finally assigned to a destroyer at Pearl Harbor, and his ship joined naval operations supporting troop movements in New Guinea in 1943 and 1944. Now, that's not all George did in 1944. That year, George found time to marry the love of his life, Elizabeth. After the war, he went back to Northwestern, another Big Ten school, by the way, for a master's degree and a PhD in physics. It was not all studying there. Along came Martha, their first daughter, at about the same time that the new Dr. Best came to Los Alamos for a new job here at the Los Alamos Scientific Laboratory. What was it like, George, to check in at 109 East Palace and to come up here and be asked for your papers and to get in and out of those guard gates? I'd really like to hear that. And I'm sure that you were delighted with the housing that you found here. Yeah. One very interesting thing that George related to Kyle was that he suddenly found a lot of those Purdue people here in Los Alamos. They had disappeared off the face of the earth, and this is where they disappeared to. So soon came along Sarah and Guy, and the Best family followed the very common migration pattern of various moves depending on how many housing points they had in a given year. The final move, though, is into the house that George still lives in. They moved there in 1956, and there he still is. He worked there at the laboratory until his retirement in 1983. Now, if I even tried to describe what he did there at the laboratory, it would involve long and unpronounceable words that have no clear meaning to me, and that maybe they'd have to shoot me after I'd said them. So I'm not going to go into that. I will say that their children are all here. Martha came here from Australia for this event, and Sarah and Guy live in the Santa Fe area and are here also. I'd like to mention that Guy went through Cub Scouts here and became active in the Explorer Post 20, where he learned river running skills. Am I right, Guy? Where are you there? Yeah, okay. And later went on to have a river touring company in Santa Fe. So we're here to recognize George's contributions to the community. George has a natural curiosity and says he's always enjoyed what he's been doing. He has been a volunteer in some capacity most of his life, and has been especially active since that retirement from the lab. In fact, he says he's put in more than 6,100 lifetime hours of volunteer time. That's pretty impressive, and it's also impressive that he knows that number, that he's kept track. I think that says something remarkable about him, too. His volunteer efforts have included the Cub Scouts, where he led Guy's Den. One project they did in the 50s was planting seedlings in a burned area near Site. There must be a pretty nice pine forest growing there right now. George has also served on the board of the East Park Pool during its planning and construction. He helped create the slopes of Pajarito Mountain, has been an active member of the Unitarian Church in Los Alamos. He served on boards too numerous to list, has taught classes to beginning computer users in the 1980s. He volunteered at blood drives, conducted tours in Georgia O'Keeffe country, worked at the Valles Caldera National Preserve greeting visitors, and has done paleontology work in the Ojito Wilderness area. Today he remains active as he welcomes visitors at Bandelier National Monument. They say he's one of the most beloved and popular volunteers there. George donates an average of 225 hours a year at Bandelier alone and has accumulated over 1,600 hours to that one organization. Kyle Wheeler summarized George, at 97 years of age, he is one of the most senior volunteers for the Los Alamos Volunteer Association. He has a quick smile and a personable nature, and he personifies what it means to be a volunteer. No one in this town, lucky enough to know him, would ever think of him as being second best. So please join me in applause for this living treasure. So now we will ask for comments from family and friends. The way this works is that you'll come up and stage on either side here. Come on up and talk for 2 or 3 minutes. And again, watch for me on your shoulder if I think you're getting along too long. Speak again loudly to the back of the room, and they'll pick you up. And remember what I need to remind myself, that you are talking to 200 of your best and closest friends. So just tell us what we need to know about this living treasure. So if people could start coming up and lining up here, would anybody like to make comments? Yes, very good. Okay. So, why don't you come on up, and then we'll just move back and forth. Okay, thank you. Please introduce yourself. You probably know who you are.
I do.
But the rest of us might not. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sarah. I'm George's 3rd child. Can you hear me in the back now? In previous years, Dad has always referred to this event as the Golden Oldies ceremony, but I noticed this year it's the Living Treasures ceremony. One of my earliest childhood memories is of my dad supporting me on his shoulders with my hands wrapped around his forehead, and I seem to recall there was more hair on top of his head then. Even though I grew too big for Dad to actually support me on his shoulders, he has continued to give me and the rest of my family his love, encouragement, insight, and support. And Dad has always led by example. Throughout his life, he has willingly stepped forward to help. With enthusiasm, a positive attitude, and insatiable curiosity. And he is very kind and has a genuine respect for and interest in others, and I've never heard him say anything negative about another person. Dad also has a wonderful and punishing sense of humor, but it is never at the expense of others. He always laughs with us, but not at us. And Dad, I know that our family is grateful for and appreciates all that you have taught us and done for us, and I think it is safe to say the community feels the same way. You are a true gem and well-deserving of the title Gold Living Treasure. And I'm glad that you're my father. Thank you. I also, my time's up, but my daughter Carla, who could not be here today, asked that I share something brief. She says, she was thinking of all the things you used to do with us, Grandpa. Walk to East Park Pool and go swimming, keep us continually humble in the matters of Scrabble, and hearts and croquet, and watch the grandchildren as they eagerly went through bags of credit union loot. And Carla was also thinking about how lucky your grandkids are to have such a well-rounded and caring person in their lives. And she says she regrets to say that more than one of the grandchildren inherited your tendency towards punning. And she says, congratulations, Grandpa, and she hopes you enjoy this honor. You're a role model to everyone.
Good afternoon. My name is Joni Budzolini. I'm the Chief of Interpretation and Visitor Services at Bandelier National Monument. And on behalf of Bandelier Superintendent Jason Lott and the staff at Bandelier, congratulations, George, and thank you. I have had the pleasure of knowing and observing George as one of Bandelier's most well-liked volunteers. George always lights up the visitor center. And when I greet George in the morning and ask how he's doing, he replies, I'm here. And that always reminds me of how important it is to be here. The staff and other volunteers enjoy sharing work at the desk with him because he is so well-liked. Mondays at Bandelier belong to George and co-volunteer Leon Heller. George began his Bandelier volunteer career in February of 2010. He is a master of the park's history, its stories, and operations in the visitor center and Frijoles Canyon. On Mondays, George alternates between staffing the visitor center desk and roving the main loop trail. He engages park visitors by answering questions, providing direction, and sharing those stories. He's very popular with our visitors, and we routinely receive great compliments for his contributions, especially from the ladies. Since 2010, as you've heard, George has averaged about 225 volunteer hours per year and has served over 1,600 hours at the park. The Bandelier staff and I agree that George is an exemplary member of our team, an outstanding contributor to our Los Alamos community, and very deserving of this honor. And George, I'm honored to say you truly are a Los Alamos living treasure. Congratulations.
Good afternoon. My name is Martha Best Henderson. I'm the one that came from Australia. I think this is a great time to celebrate Dad, not only for what he has contributed to the community, but also what he's so generously given to his family. When we were young, he and our mother together introduced us to the environmental wonders of the world, the flora and fauna, the geology, the rocks and minerals, the water we drink, and the food we eat as precious resources in need of our respect. We absorbed early the concept of the interdependence of our political, social, economic, and natural systems, and of the importance of incorporating it in every facet of decision-making. We learn to appreciate beauty and the expression of ideas through art, music, and language. Our parents encouraged us to feed our brains, our stomachs, and the rest of our bodies with balance and diversity so that we could lead long, productive lives and contribute in positive ways to the communities in which we live. They supported us, and Dad continues to support us in all of our endeavors, encouraging each of us to find our own unique path through life. When we have faced life's difficult challenges, they have stepped forward with unconditional love, support, and guidance. And whatever the situation, good or bad, Dad is at the ready with ice cream to either celebrate or lighten the load. Indeed, Dad is an inspiration to me. I am glad to have this opportunity to honor him as a living treasure of both the community and the family. Thank you.
You've got another one. I'm Guy Best, and you've heard some about me from the introduction here. I'm also a second best, so congratulations, Dad. When Dad retired, Mom was worried that he would be bored with nothing to do. To her chagrin, he soon was volunteering with many organizations, and she wished that he would be home more. My sisters and I are fortunate to have parents who, through example, taught us the value of volunteering. By contributing our time, energy, and knowledge, we can make a positive contribution to our neighborhood, community, country, and to the world. Thank you, Dad, for being such a good role model by being a lifelong volunteer. You are first best in my book.
Hello, my name is Ann Kane. I'm from Del Norte Credit Union, and our CEO, Chuck Valenti, could not be here today, but he really wanted me to share some words about George. George has served on the Del Norte Credit Union Board, formerly Los Alamos Credit Union, for decades. He was actually the board chairman, the vice chairman, and the secretary, as well as on the supervisory committee, which he still serves on, and it's always a pleasure to see him every month. It has been many decades that he tirelessly donated his time to the betterment of the nonprofit cooperative. He rarely misses a meeting and always comes prepared and frequently catches mistakes, much to the chagrin of management. He is quick to make a clever joke or point out a flaw in our logic. He has been an important leader in helping Del Norte Credit Union grow from a small local credit union to a $620 million financial institution. He is humble, respected, and loved by management and fellow volunteers alike. He is known to have a sweet tooth, and if you're not careful, he is liable to steal your dessert with a fork that extends out 3 feet.
I'm Leon Heller. 4 years ago, I started to volunteer at Bandelier. They asked me, what day would you like to come? I said, Monday. What hours would you like to come? I said, 10 to 2. What a stroke of luck that was. There was George, who had already been volunteering at Bandelier for close to 4 years. He volunteers Mondays, 10 to 2. And this was the beginning of a splendid relationship. Each week, think about it, 4 years, 200 hours approximately per year, 800 hours that we have spent together. We divide the tasks up between us. It's always mutually agreed upon. who should be at the desk, who should go out on the trails. George has a wonderful sense of humor and keeps me and everyone else happy during the time that we spend there. He is always cheerful. I've never known him otherwise. And it's been a great experience for me to have known and to continue to know George today.
I think I'm going to speak loud enough.
Okay, project.
My name is Dale Thompson. I'm president of the Laboratory Retiree Group. And on that board, George has been there. Now, this is a true example of why youngsters ought to listen to the elders. Well, he's been on my board many, many years. And I finally realized that when he says something, I really better be listening because there's really great support for our group. So I'm here to say that we're just super proud and also blessed to have such a man to be with the retirees and working for their benefits and things. Thank you.
Thank you, Dale. George, would you please come up and give us some of that wisdom? Maybe some humor, but that's a lot of pressure.
Well, I'm George. And I've prepared some words here, and you've heard most of them already. But I didn't have a plan B. So I will go through my brief presentation and hope you can tolerate it. 17 years, 8 months, and 18 days ago, my parents brought forth on this continent a new son, and they named him, obviously, George. I was there, but I have no recollection of the event. I was, as has been said, the second in the family. And after a third, I was born in Chicago. And after a third was born, my parents decided they better find more room. So they moved to a suburb west of Chicago, and that's where I grew up and went to school from kindergarten through the first 2 years of college. And then I finished my studies for a bachelor's degree, as has been said, at Purdue University. And after graduation, I was commissioned in the Navy because I had a technical education, and they were in dire need of such people. The following World War II and graduate studies, my wife Elizabeth and my first daughter, Martha, who is spoken here, and I came to Los Alamos for a few years. Obviously, I'm still here. It does happen. We meet on this mesa today to commemorate what Cheryl Pongrantz, Ruth Williamson, and I have been doing to help make Los Alamos a desirable place to live. I was quite surprised when I was informed that the Board of Living Treasures had selected me as one of this year's Living Treasures. I have known many of the previous ones. Their pictures are over here. But I never dreamed I would join them. I have volunteered, as you've heard, with quite a few organizations, and such as the Sombrio Board, various county committees and boards, Ghost Ranch, Bandelier, blood drives, to help them achieve their objectives of serving people. Now, if I can get to the second page here. With regard to the award, I owe some people, perhaps some of you, thanks for nominating me to be a living treasure. I heard more from Bob today than I've known in the past about the nomination process. And I also want to give a big thanks to the Living Treasures Board of Directors. They too are volunteers. Now, about my immediate family members, you've met some of them, and they come from, as they've mentioned, come from near and far, and I certainly appreciate them coming. My great-grandson, Jackson, who turned 1 year old last month, came from Denver, and he brought his parents with him. They're one of my granddaughters and her husband, and then my grandson and his wife are here from Flagstaff, and you met him. I think, no, you didn't. Well, he's here. And I have a granddaughter from Flagstaff who was here. With the family got together yesterday because she is on her way back to Flagstaff to teach an environmental restoration class tomorrow. My youngest daughter and her husband, Sarah, is the daughter, are here from El Dorado. And my son, Guy, and his wife are here from Santa Fe. And finally, there's my oldest daughter, Martha, and her husband from Sydney, Australia. You who are present today will not long remember what we say here. But this community should continue to benefit from what all Los Alamos living treasures do. Thanks to all of you for celebrating with us.
Thank you. So we have a,
Well, I have no encore.
okay.
No, I say I have none.
Oh, none, oh, okay. We have the medallion for you. I feel it. This is hooked funny. I'm not sure it's gonna fit over. Oh yeah, there we go. Okay.
Don't take my ears.
Yeah, no, whatever you do. Here, you put it on.
Oh,
Okay, I'm sorry. There we go. Okay, that was not well done. We have a picture that we haven't unwrapped, but you'll just wrap it up again, that is like the picture that's here. And then we have a Living Treasures of Los Alamos. And I won't read all three of them because they're all the same except for the name. Living Treasures of Los Alamos, with respect and loving appreciation, honors George Best for your outstanding dedication to the life, heart, and spirit of our community, for sharing your unique vision of a life well lived. April 22nd, 2018. Thank you, George.
thank you.
Hi, my name's Becky Ortel. I just wanted to acknowledge Marilyn Stevens, who hand calligraphied these beautiful certificates, and they are signed as well.
Oh, thank you. Now, if I had an office, I could put this on the wall, like Bob did all his working life.
And now they're in a box in the basement.
Oh,
Carry these for you.
oh, thank you.
Thank you, George. You didn't disappoint us. Next in order is Cheryl Pongratz. Cheryl grew up in Rhode Island, Virginia, and Illinois with 4 brothers and a sister. The family took car trips each summer to South Texas, to their father's parents' farm, and to enjoy the wide open spaces of Texas, and to Chicago to their mother's parents, where they learned how to get along in a big city. Cheryl received her BA degree from the College of William and Mary in Virginia. At a dance one night, she met this graduate student in physics from the University of Maryland named Maury. They dated long distance for 2 years before getting married on April 8th, 1967. Now, in case you started counting on your fingers like I had to figure that out, it's 51 years. Cheryl got a teaching job in Maryland before they moved to Los Alamos in March of 1973. They had 2 young daughters when Maury was offered the position at Los Alamos that included health insurance. But sadly, one of their daughters, Amy, who was born with a congenital heart condition, died before the move. But they decided to go ahead with their plans. The intent, as with many people, was to be here for a year or 2. And now, 45 years later, here we are. So Cheryl, Maury, and Karen came to the Hill, and then soon came Dan in 1974. And Dan is here with us, with his wife, MJ. Cheryl and Maury busied themselves with raising the children, with working, of course, oh, by the way, working, and being active in the Catholic Church. Cheryl continued her work as a science teacher, but in 1981 jumped to the other side, to administration. She had a lot of classroom experience herself, and that made her as an administrator much more effective because she understood the problems faced in the trenches. Her positions with the Los Alamos Public Schools included assistant principals at Pueblo Junior High, later in Los Alamos Middle School, principal at Aspen Elementary, the middle school, and the high school. And finally, she ended up as an assistant superintendent of schools. She finally retired from the public schools in 1999. She was especially passionate about trying to find solutions to the drug problems in school-age children. I have the feeling that Cheryl really enjoyed her work, but she told Kyle, retire the first day that you can. Try something new. Stretch the boundaries. Look for those new things. So what has she done in 18 years of retirement? Well, one thing is she's enjoyed watching her grandson Kevin grow up. Kevin was born a week after she retired. She loves to travel. She loves to see new things. But her love for education did not stop with retirement. She worked for the Northern New Mexico Network for Rural Education, working with the schools in northern New Mexico to improve science and math education and school administration, and that job took her all over northern New Mexico. In October of 2000, her life took a sudden turn, or maybe we should say a sudden fall. She fell off of a ladder and seriously injured her foot. My father-in-law would have said, "You shouldn't have done that, Cheryl." But it required surgery to fuse the bones, and it was a long convalescence. Driving her motorized scooter around didn't slow her down, though, and she continued to be involved with many activities, especially those involved with education, mental health programs, and other people who are underserved. She's worked with Kiwanis to raise money for scholarships for graduating high school seniors, for smoke detectors for new families as they leave the medical center. She served on the board of the Family Strengths Network, for the Senior Appreciation Night, for the Community Health Council, the DWI Planning Council, and the board of the Homeowners Association where she lives. Probably other things too that we're forgetting. She's an experienced grant writer, and she speaks passionately about her work at the Family Council, where she is referred to as the paperwork czar. She worries about the needs of the working poor and people who can't get the services they need without the benefit of Medicare and other assistance. Another activity that she and Maury have pursued was that they were charter members of the Los Alamos Public Schools Foundation. This raises money for various educational projects, and one or the other of them has been on the board ever since it was established. Cheryl is one of those people who works quietly behind the scenes while contributing enormously to our community. If she hears of a problem, she offers assistance and support. If someone needs emotional support, she finds a way to help, offering a friendly ear and a supportive heart. She is a doer, a problem solver, and an organized person who knows how to get things done. Please join me in applause for our living treasure, Cheryl. And now I'll ask Barbara Lang to come, and then other people to fill in and make comments. So Barbara, come on up.
He only did that because I said I had to go first. So I've known Cheryl, I'm Barbara Lang. I've known Cheryl since I moved here with my husband and my children in 1990. She has always been my friend. She's always been my leader. She's always been my boss. I have followed her everywhere she goes, and now she's my hero. So I've written this speech. Some duplicates what Bob said, but please bear with me. I wrote it based on some of my favorite quotations. because they all fit Cheryl. Pablo Picasso is quoted as saying, "The meaning of life is to find your gift. The purpose of life is to give it away." This was written as if he had Cheryl in mind, and is truly the reason many of us are so thankful for her and nominated her as a living treasure. Cheryl is one of those people who has been bestowed with so many gifts, and she has shared those gifts with us all over the years, enriching our lives with a lust for knowledge, a commitment to continuous improvement, care for others, a zest for life itself. You can never take an energized bunny lecture and slow her down, but an unending sense of humor that washes away even the darkest of moments in our lives and our careers. Whether we know it or not, we have all been touched by something Cheryl has done, something Cheryl has said, planned for, administered, or created over these many years. Plutarch said, "Education is not the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire. For the mind does not require filling like a bottle, but rather like the wood. It only rekindles and requires the kindling to create, an impulse to think independently, and an ardent desire to find the truth." Cheryl spent 14 years teaching, first in Maryland, then within the Los Alamos Public Schools as a middle school and a high school science teacher. I truly believe that she saw her purpose to be the force in motivating students to love learning no matter what the subject. She wanted students to take factual knowledge and to turn it into independent thought, to use it to create something new and meaningful, to benefit themselves, their families, the community, and maybe humanity itself. Just as one small example, Cheryl never lost her love of science and elevated the science fair throughout the Los Alamos Public Schools as something exciting and special. The event itself ebbs and flows with each new administration that comes along, but Cheryl nurtured it, spent hours fundraising and planning for it. During her leadership years, we had students win prizes at the local, state, and national levels because of their own independent knowledge, creative thought, and passion. It was, though, in part because of her behind-the-scenes planning and nurturing, they got the platform they needed to succeed and excel. This is true about Cheryl. Dream big, work hard, stay humble. For the next 18 years, Cheryl worked as an administrator, first as an assistant principal at the middle school level before becoming the principal at Aspen Elementary. Then she became the principal at the middle school, the high school, and on to being the assistant superintendent of schools. I figured in a very conservative accounting that through her educational tenure, Cheryl directly touched the lives of 90,000 students, parents, teachers, staff members, board members, and citizens within this greater community. Her 14 to 18-hour work days were filled with guiding, planning, learning, budgeting to make her school or make the district more efficient, and to make sure that the academic achievement was raised for all students that were in this community. There were days of great tragedy to overcome, and not everyone was happy with some of the decisions that she made. But Cheryl powered through each event with an enormous sense of care for others, admitting when she was wrong and always looking for ways to improve the experience for students, teachers, staff, and parents alike. She cared about each one of us and would lend a helping hand whenever she saw a need. When I first moved here to Los Alamos, I had 2 house payments, 2 children to care for, and I had not received my first paycheck from the schools, and I wasn't going to get it for 6 more weeks. But there was an event at the middle school in the evening that required a fee. I told her I couldn't afford it. She reached into her pocket, she pulled out, she paid my way. There was when she heard my plight, yeah, she heard that, but then several years later, she's still doing it. She called me one night and said, I have a psychologist that is coming to work for the Family Council, who is much in the same position I was, and would I be willing to let her live with me for 2 or 3 months? And of course, I did it because Cheryl asked me. Cheryl brought the Baldrige ideals and the Quality New Mexico program to the district. I still hear in my dreams, plan, do, study, act. Planning for improvement, measuring it to see if it worked, and trying to achieve continuous improvement in all that we did. That was her mantra. You could still feel Cheryl's presence after she retired, and the schools pursued, and we won Quality New Mexico awards based on these Baldrige principles. In her last years as assistant superintendent, Cheryl was able to gain funding through the Northern Network for a small group of us to attend 2 cutting-edge and specialized summer programs at Harvard University. One to implement the standards education, and one to establish advanced educational technology throughout our district. Cheryl was always dreaming big and helping us to find the ways to implement best practices. Humor is the affectionate communication of insight. On the flip side of all these serious pursuits, Cheryl encouraged us to laugh at ourselves and make life a little bit more fun. I know one of Cheryl's favorite stories is about the time she and Jim Long, her favorite boss, and he was then the principal of Pueblo Junior High, got through the grapevine of the middle school students about how they were going to close their school, so they were going to have this wild shaving cream party and just spray the school. Well, she got word of it. So she and Jim Long spent hours trying to recreate little signs that looked like they had been written by middle schoolers. And then after they did that, it said, shaving cream fight, after school, urban park, don't tell. They took those signs and they went and they plastered them in bathrooms and underneath seats, and they just acted like this came from the students themselves. So the last day of Pueblo Junior High School, all the students left the school like magic, rushed to Urban Park, and had the biggest shaving cream fight ever. And Cheryl and Jim Long went and followed them with their car to make sure everything was okay, until Cheryl realized, do you remember the hatchback cars? That they had not locked the hatchback. They did not want to get smothered with shaving cream, so they drove away. Thus began the tradition that middle schoolers have, maybe even to this day, sponsored by Youth Working for Youth, parent groups, YMCA, the shaving cream fight at the end of the school year. Cheryl started that. All in that vein, I'm just going to tell you the comforting advice that Cheryl gave me as I became principal at Aspen Elementary School. To quote, never stand in an open field when they let the kindergartners out for recess. They go right for your knees to hug you. Always stand by a tree or a piece of playground equipment so you don't fall over. That's probably the most valuable advice I got. Laugh at yourself first before anybody else can. Now here's the secret Cheryl's never shared with any of you. No matter how tired you are, Always swoop off your desk at night, put the piles of paperwork in a closet so everyone will think that you are super organized. And remember, the first rule of leadership, everything is your fault. Cheryl, you have been and always will be a living treasure.
Thank you, Barbara. Kurt, why don't you go?
Good afternoon. My name is Kurt Steinhaus, and my wife Jo Beth and I are neighbors of Cheryl's, and I'm also the superintendent of the Los Alamos Public Schools. Cheryl's impact on education is multi-generational, and it would fill this entire church if we tried to cover it all. So I won't cover it this afternoon, but I would like to say, Cheryl, thank you for starting that end of the year fight. I'm just so appreciative of that. Okay, I want you to use your imagination. You know Cheryl. If you know her, think about her voice for a minute. And Barbara, I'm going to pick up on one of the quotes. Here we go. If you don't feed the teachers, then they will eat the students. They'll eat the students. Okay, let's try that again. The good Cheryl Pongrantz I know would want us to try that again. If you don't feed the teachers, then the teachers will eat the students. Thank you. Here's a couple of accomplishments that many folks don't know about. About 15 years ago, she was asked to help with grant writing and to conceptualize this new idea for Northern New Mexico called the Math and Science Academy. And that has been providing professional development for teachers all over Northern New Mexico in the area of math and science, and had an incredible impact. And we appreciate, Cheryl, that design that you've got. Second item, when she was assistant principal at the high school, one of the things she championed was fixing those bathrooms at Dwayne Smith Auditorium. And it only took 20 years, Cheryl, but we're there. Thursday night, we're going to cut the ribbon on new bathrooms at Dwayne Smith. And Barbara, when I heard you talk about the science fair, Cheryl, I want you to know that this year, in 2 weeks, we're taking one of the largest contingents of students to the International Science Fair than we've had in about 10 years, so thanks for doing that. That's great. 2 more points. Her work on the LAPS Foundation has resulted in over $1 million worth of contributions to Los Alamos schools, so thank you, Cheryl, for that. We've heard a lot about her history, but let me talk about 3 weeks ago. So she's getting ready to go on a vacation to Costa Rica, and she goes to the doctor. She's got her other arm up in a sling like this, and she says to the doctor, can I still go on the zip lines? And she was serious about it. So no, she didn't go on the zip line, but she did do snorkeling on this vacation 3 weeks ago. So Cheryl, on behalf of everyone at the Los Alamos Public Schools, thank you so much for everything you've done.
Good afternoon. I'm Joanna Gillespie, and Cheryl and I are first and foremost friends. But I'm the friend that when I call, she slightly interviews me to find out what the nature of my call is. So I'm that person. But I've been to some meetings, and maybe you've been to some too, where you go and there's all these big ideas, and people keep lobbing ideas, and they're big and they're fluffy and they're grandiose, if you will, and they don't have any shape, and no one's accountable for them. And you start to get a little nervous. If you're me, you get very nervous. And so, because you begin to be concerned that you might be the object of giving them shape or giving them money or implementing all of them. But if Cheryl Pongrantz is at the meeting, you don't need to worry. Because one thing is certain, she will never attend a meeting where she will not take swift, thoughtful, and meaningful action. And one of those actions might be to leave. Okay? And I mean it. But there is power in saying no. And there is power in saying, that's not my skill set. Or there is power in saying, I don't have it in me to do one more thing. And I learned that from Cheryl. It's important. there's another thing that's really clear about Cheryl, is that if she says she will do it, she will do exactly what she says she will do, and you need to give her a deadline, because she wants one, because she's going to maybe do it the night before. It'll be done well, but she's going to get it done. So when the Los Alamos Public Schools Foundation was in its infancy, Cheryl was there along with many of us. Cheryl, Maury, small handful, Barbara. We were putting together this idea, and we had a Rubbermaid tote and a big fancy idea, and it didn't have any shape. But the core value was there. We wanted to give meaningful and lasting support to the public schools, and we wanted it primarily to go to the educators in one form or another. And so she provided really thoughtful leadership. And some people do that by giving you more ideas of things to do, but Cheryl did it through policies and procedures. And it sounds dry, but the business of putting together a business can be dry, but very necessary. And Cheryl put the bones and the skeleton into an organization that does exactly what it was intended to do. It gives meaningful support to public education, and particularly to educators. Now, it'll continue long after Cheryl and I are both gone, but it has the bones and it stands erect because of her. Now, this is personal, so if you don't like personal, or if it's going to make you upset if I get upset, I noticed the mosaic pattern in the acoustic panels is not even, so check it out. Check it out. Okay. So I'm not from a landlocked state, but many of you might be, so I'm going to tell you just a tiny bit about sailboats. I took a sailing class once, and I learned that there's really only about 8 essential parts to a sailboat. And I was fascinated because I thought, oh, I could maybe do this. It's athletic, but I could maybe do it. So I wasn't very good at it. I didn't last a full day. I got sunburned. I nearly dumped my boat over. The Boy Scouts had a fabulous time, and they did well. But I learned that when you stand on the beach and you watch a sailboat, it's all about the sail for me, right? It's moving through water. I'm looking at the sail, and I'm thinking, the sail is fabulous. Cheryl's not a sail. The sail needs attention. Cheryl's a keel. A keel is a small, flat plank on the bottom of a boat that keeps it from going end over end, or keeps it from laying sideways and flying horizontally on the water. Cheryl was my keel. She let me say all the crazy words about a bad situation on more than one occasion. And she made me feel like I wasn't going to flip upside down. I was so grateful. And the thing is, Cheryl doesn't need to be a sail. She actually doesn't need this. We need this. I need to tell someone she's fabulous. I really do. But she doesn't need us. So for the thousands of people for whom Cheryl has been a keel, thank you.
I'm back up here again. I get to speak about fabulous people today, but I'm back up here because I'm chair of Los Alamos Family Council, and I really wanted to talk about something that is so near and dear to Cheryl's heart. Some of you may know what we do, but we promote emotional and social well-being through advocacy, education, prevention, and counseling. And we do that through our counseling center, as well as the Youth Activity Center, which I know my child and many children throughout the community have had the opportunity to participate in. And she is called the Paperwork Czar. But most of you may not know what that really entails, but for the Los Alamos Family Council, that means not only dealing with the regular type of health insurance, but Medicare, Medicaid, which is very, very critical to those that are in need due to low income and other things. And it is a monstrosity of paperwork to accomplish. The healthcare world has changed so dramatically, and this is so vital to the survival of Los Alamos Family Council. And, you know, Cheryl will say that she's an employee, but she's really a volunteer. She puts in so much time, and she helps to find grant money. Wherever we need to do fundraising, she is always there. She's probably one of our biggest, she won that trip to Costa Rica, so, at her own event. So we can always count on her for that as well. But I just can't say enough. Los Alamos Family Council has been through a lot over the years, and its survival and continued survival has everything to do with Cheryl, and she's been monumental and is such a valuable asset for something that is so tremendously, tremendously valuable for the community. And I just wanted to share a couple words because Cheryl really is part of that. So thank you, Cheryl.
Cheryl, the podium is yours.
You all will be happy to know that I have absolutely nothing planned to say. I really do appreciate my daughter, who recently became a neighbor of George's. You probably don't know that, George. She bought a little house on Manhattan Loop and is fixing it up. 1955, nothing's ever been done till this week or last week, and brought our grandson, Kevin, along with her, and my son Dan and his wife MJ came from Lincoln, Nebraska. Maury and I frequently say we thought we were good parents. We don't know where we went wrong. We have 2 attorneys. But I appreciate them coming, and I really do appreciate the kind words from the people who spoke. And some of my travel buddies are here. My probably number 1 travel buddy, Jackie, is here, and Louise was my Costa Rica travel buddy, and that was fun. She took care of me when I had a much bigger cast and thing on my arm. So the only thing I would want to say is that the advantage of being a living treasure is you have to be old, and that being old, you get to forget about a lot of the things that people said, nice things that people said, because it would be totally embarrassing otherwise. But I do appreciate the kind words, and I appreciate the support of this community for the 45 years that we've been here. We didn't plan to be here, but we're still here, and my suspicion is, since Karen is going to live here part-time, that we're probably going to stay here. She helped with my dad's dying year last year and said she found out she needed to come and live near her old and infirm parents to take care of us. So thank you all for being here. Ruth is a neighbor, and congratulations, Ruth. And George now is a neighbor of Karen, so congratulations to you too. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you. The medallion, we'll see if we can fit it over your head. Okay.
Thank you.
There we go. And the Living Treasures certificate. The picture. Oops, there we
It's not
go.
great. You did a good job.
Thank
you. You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay, now I want to challenge each of you to turn to the person to your right, to your left, in front of you, behind you, and shake their hands and tell them that they are a living treasure to you. And while you're doing that, you can stand back up again and stretch for about 90 seconds. Don't go away. All right, if you can have a seat, we will continue. Finally, we return our attention to Ruth Williamson. Kyle summarizes her write-up about Ruth in this way. There are several themes that emerge as most important in the life of Ruth Williamson: faith, family, friendships, music, and a spirit of generosity. Ruth has touched so many lives with her music and small and large kind gestures. But she insists that she is the person who has benefited from these friendships she's made and the people she has met along the way who have enriched her life. Ruth is the daughter of an American Baptist minister, and that will give you an idea of how much money there was floating around in that household. From her early childhood, it was music that gave Ruth a sense of self-worth. She became a music addict and has fed that addiction all of her life. She learned piano, violin, clarinet, trumpet, and during her high school years, she actually worked after-school jobs to pay herself for organ lessons. She and her friends shared Sunday afternoons, gathered around the piano, singing until their voices gave out. Ruth began teaching piano while a student at Kalamazoo College. Kyle wrote, "Ruth is convinced that she has learned as much from her students as they have learned from her." More from Kyle. Ruth's first job out of college was as an elementary music supervisor for a school district in Pennsylvania, where she traveled to 12 schools in the Allegheny Mountains, teaching singing to 40 classes a week. One class, a special education class, filled with active, loving, and appreciative children, was a source of a joyful revelation to Ruth. When the children were involved in their musical activities, Ruth felt that they knew that they were as wonderful, as smart, and as capable of as everyone else. During that first year out of college, Ruth married Ken Williamson, whom she had met at Midland, Michigan, and thus began a new and wonderful phase of Ruth's life. Ken earned his master's and PhD degree in chemical engineering from Penn State University, and eventually they moved with their young son, Ken, to Los Alamos. Ruth and Ken raised 3 children: Ken, who is a doctor in Texas, Kim, an artist in Oregon, and Karen, a musician in Colorado. She has 4 grandchildren, 2 step-grandsons, and 2 step-great-grandsons. Ruth's volunteer activities have covered many decades and involved many age groups. She organized and directed a youth choir at Bethlehem Lutheran Church that made several tours throughout the Southwest with a new Christian musical every year. A special lesson was learned one year at a children's hospital in Texas, where a girl who was blind and deaf usually spent most of her time making loud noises, but each time the music began, this girl sensed the vibrations of the instruments and the voices and became quiet. This and many other experiences impacted the choir members, some of whom had never traveled far from this home. Ruth also found that music can be therapy in other ways. She's had many opportunities to work with youth and adults who are mentally, visually, or physically challenged, I should say. She calls these people handy-capable. She has witnessed firsthand the healing power of music. One young man she remembered with head injuries and partial paralysis showed remarkable improvement from the piano lessons with Ruth, and even learned to play the guitar. Then came profound sadness in 1989 when Ken was just 53 years old. He died of a cancer, and part of Ruth died with him. She describes Ken as the best husband in the world. In her deep grief, she felt that the happiest part of her life was over. In dealing with that grief, she decided, though, that perhaps her remaining years would make some sense if she increased her efforts to bring happiness to others. She turned to the healing power of music in her own life. She set herself a goal of trying to touch one life a day with a card, a phone call, a visit, a ride to an appointment, or a concert, a food item, or perhaps just a listening ear or a word of appreciation. She said it was purely a survival technique, but that something so simple can become a habit. Ruth has written cards for others, was a hospice volunteer, and with additional coursework became a bereavement counselor. Now the litany of other activities. Ruth has led weekly music activities at the Day Out Adult Daycare Center for almost 20 years. She's organized weekly noon musicals at the Los Alamos Lab Cafeteria. With Mary Lois Kerr, she co-founded the Los Alamos Piano Teachers Association, now called the Los Alamos Music Teachers Association, has served as treasurer of the Los Alamos Concert Association and as president of the Student Concerts Incorporated. She played trumpet with the Los Alamos Sinfonietta, piano with the Los Alamos Community Winds, and has played several benefit concerts as a member of, get this, the Hot Flashes 2 Piano Quartet, the Vested Interests 2 Piano Quartet, and the Bach to Blues Piano Duo. She has served as choir accompanist and substitute director for the United Church Choir and with the Los Alamos Homeschool Chorus. I don't know about the rest of you. I'm kind of tired of this litany. I just need to go home and take a nap after all of these things that all of these people have done. It's just amazing. Ruth claimed to receive more than she gave, but how could she? Thank you, Ruth. Thank you for all the ways you have blessed us all. On a personal note, I'd like to add that a few years after Ken died, I wrote a 6-stanza poem and asked Ruth to set it to music. The resulting hymn is beautiful not for the words, but for the music. In Ruth's music, the first, third, and fifth stanzas are set in a minor key. And the second, fourth, and sixth make a sudden shift, bursting into a joyous major key. In this hymn, Ruth communicated the sadness that life brings to us all and the healing power that celebratory music brings despite the sadness. Kurt, why don't you go ahead and start lowering the screen. I've asked that hymn be sung at my memorial service. Thank you, Ruth, for that blessing. And now enjoy me with an applause for this living treasure. Are there those who would like to come forward and speak? Why don't you just come right on up, and the rest of you can sit along. Thank you.
Sure. My name is Kim, and I am Ruth's favorite child. Of course, I have to start out by saying that I have the most amazing mom ever, and I really do. She's always been there for me my whole life. No matter what crazy things I do, decisions I make, or beliefs I have, Mom is my #1 cheerleader. Even when she may not agree with the choices I make, she still supports me. Her heart is so big and her love is so deep, I'm truly blessed to be her daughter. My mother and father had an extraordinary love for each other, and somehow I was lucky enough to witness it. Unfortunately, their love story ended tragically. When my father was only 53 years old, he died from a rare form of cancer. My parents had been married 30 years. This event altered all of our lives forever, but my mom suffered the most. She was completely lost when Dad died and really had no interest in living without him. Her sorrow was deep. It was as deep as her love for him was. It was so hard to see her in such pain and grief. One day she woke up and decided that she had to do something in order to survive this loss. She made the decision then and there to dedicate her life to doing good for others. She started by doing one thing every day for someone else. One random act of kindness. Many of you in this room are the lucky recipients of her birthday cards, anniversary cards, holiday cards, get well cards, and sympathy cards. My mom practically has a Hallmark store in her pantry. It's one of her favorite pastimes to shop for humorous cards. In 1 month, she may send out as many as 30 cards. My mom is my idol. I've learned so much from her about courage, compassion, and strength. Thank you, Mamacita Conchita Bonita. You really are adorable. I love you, and I know that Dad is so proud of you. I have one little note to read. My daughter Sammy couldn't be here, but wanted to say that getting to know her graham cracker, as she so lovingly calls her, has been one of the greatest pleasures in her life. She admires her grandma's kindness and selflessness and strives to be as strong as her throughout all the trials life may throw her way. She sends her love and is proud of our living treasure.
Thank you, Kim. And now we're going to see a 3-minute video. Thanks, Kirk. Good afternoon, and thank you for letting me join you today as we celebrate the living treasures of Los Alamos. My name is Paul Horpedahl, and I'm here to help celebrate with you, and in particular to say a few words about Ruth Williamson, one of the honorees today. You see, Ruth was our choir director at Bethlehem Lutheran Church. She scooped up a whole bunch of kids, put them in the choir loft, and she gave them music to share the word of Christ with the congregation, but music that was relevant to us, music that was fun for us to sing, music that inspired us. She only had one rule for us, and that was to participate. We had to be there for rehearsals on Wednesday nights to learn the music, and with her and Isla Johnson. Then we had to be there again on Sunday mornings at 8 a.m. to warm up and prepare for the morning service at 8:30. And participate we did, with heart. Ruth inspired us, and we wanted to be there for her, and we wanted to be there to have the chance to sing the Word of God to the congregation. Eventually, Ruth brought to us some folk musicals for church. The first one of these was Joy is Like the Rain. And once we had it tight and together, she took us out of the walls of the church and into the community. We became missionaries of music. We went to Navajo country in Arizona. We went to Colorado. And we drove all across Texas sharing the word. We grew so much in our faith, and as a family of believers, we took care of each other, and we learned a lot about the communities around us. Of course, these were not without particularly strenuous events. In particular, there was the evening that two cars, or well, actually there's a few cars, took a right in Texas and ended up in Louisiana instead of going left to our next venue. But Ruth stood steadfast, and she put together a very quick recasting, and without any rehearsals, she led us so beautifully through the entire performance that night. I learned a few things that night. 1, stay calm in the storm. 2, always think about the what ifs. And the third one that I still use today, the show must go on. As Ruth was putting together and organizing, finding music, rehearsing us, finding chaperones, planning trips, we were the recipients of amazing gifts. We learned about talents that we may not have otherwise known we had. We grew in our faith, and we grew as a family. Many of us are still friends today and keep in touch with each other after all these years. On behalf of those people who sang together and prayed together, I would like to say thank you, Ruth. You are still a lifelong mentor and a lifelong friend. You really are a living treasure and a cherished gift.
Good afternoon. I am Karen. I'm Ruth's youngest daughter, and let's be honest, the favorite. I'm grateful that I can be here. I don't live far. I live in Colorado, so I was able to come and be here. The rest of my family was unable to be here, so I have some messages for you from the rest of my family. So this first message is from Kaylee. She's our oldest. She's a junior at Western Washington University up in Washington State. She says, "My grandma is the most kind, caring, generous, and loving soul I know. Not only does she always make me laugh, but she's taught me how to live a fulfilled life. I look up to how she loves and cares for those around her. She makes my life so much brighter. She is bold. She's a beautiful storm of love." So that's from Kaylee. This is from our other daughter, Elena. She is attending school at CU in Boulder, so she was unable to come. She says, "Grandma, there are so many things that I could say about you, and none of them would do you any justice. You're the most incredible human being ever. I will never be able to fully put into words how much you mean to me, but I can go the rest of my life trying. You've put up with the countless amount of negative things in your life, but you still manage to be the most positive person I know. That strength and perseverance inspires me on a daily basis. Through your countless puzzles, gingerbread house failures, laughing until our stomachs hurt, delicious cookies, and constant smiles, you are the best. I'm so unbelievably lucky to have you in my life. And out of all the people in the world, all of the women to be grandmas, I got the best there is. I love you so much. Love, Elena, your favorite grandchild." So I guess the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And this is from my husband, who is gone for 7 months. He's an actor and he's performing in some musicals. So he is British, so he starts out by saying, "Mumsy. Thinking about all you have done and mean to us is staggering. I was so thankful that you took an Englishman into your family and have shown me so much love and even let me call you Mumsy. I am so thankful that your daughter has so many of your great traits and that building a legacy may not have been a goal of yours, but you sure have built a great one. You should be so proud of all you've done and are doing and still have to do. Wish I could have been there with you on this special day, but sending my love to you, Colin." I was looking through my phone this morning and I found this little quote that I just thought was very fitting. It said, this is from someone called Dodinsky. The quote says, "To strengthen the muscles of your heart, the best exercise is lifting someone else's spirit." So I don't think my mother will ever have cardiovascular disease.
I've known Ruth for decades and have always, always, always been in awe of how much time she has given to these many, many, many things, many groups that she has influenced and has worked on, and not just in passing, but with real time and effort. I have always been terribly, really impressed with her personal care, her personal love of people, which includes birthday cards, cards that have every meaning going, from compassion to congratulations. I have a stack of them, all with handwritten notes. At every little point in my life that I needed a card, there it was. She, for many years, has delighted the people who are in the adult daycare at the senior center. And for me personally, my husband had Alzheimer's for 15 years, and his memory, he forgot my name eventually and all that sort of thing. But music, the music that stayed in his brain and in many Alzheimer's patients, Ruth was able to bring that out. He went every Wednesday morning to Ruth's day out, a music session, and she would play songs that she very carefully made. She had a theme for every Wednesday, and he would sit there and the words, he could remember the words of the songs that Ruth played, which was really very touching for me to see. And this gift of music that she has been just given with great heart to many, many, many people. This musical talent struck me over the years. I belonged to the music piano group, and she plays with every time. We meet monthly. And I have been very impressed with her talent, and I got to thinking about that talent and how she shared it. Most of us that have some musical talent do it in the privacy of our own homes, but she has used it and over in groups and with individuals. And a while back, I wrote a poem that kind of, I was thinking this magical gift of music that she has, and especially at the piano, because she always plays the piano at our groups. And I'd like to finish with this poem to Ruth. You sit at the piano and gather the black dots and lines to fluid fingertips. I'm sorry. You sit at the piano and gather the black dots and lines into your eyes, pass them through your brain and heart to fluid fingertips. We hear the soul of Mozart flood into us.
I'm Jennifer Bartlett, and this is my mother Nancy and my father John, and I'm speaking also for my brother John, because we're all so grateful to Ruth. Ruth Williamson is like a fairy godmother who swoops in, scattering fairy dust of those things that sustain life. You know, faith, hope, and the greatest of these, love. And one hardly knows whence she came and where all she spreads it. We didn't know. I spent so much time with my best pal, Karen, and our families shared so much time with her family, that Ruth was kind of like my second mom. Church, sleepovers, picnics, birthdays, car trips. With my mother, too, an audience for the little shows Karen and my brother and I put on. Drop everything and watch. Applause, applause. She really is my brother John's godmother. He's so sorry that his work in music takes him elsewhere today. Speaking for all of us, I'll share just one example. There's so many stories, but one example of her fairy dust that secured her forever in our hearts as living treasure. My folks went on a trip back east for a week, back when long distance included phone calls. I was 15, brother 13. The first time alone that long, I was in charge. I got this. Things were going great until brother wandered in after one of his frequent but worse than usual bicycle wrecks. Shaken, moaning, broken eyeglasses, road rash all over his body, face, mouth. Bloodied up he was, but he looked scarier than I thought it really was. I can do this. I got my Florence Nightingale on. Whatever you do, just don't go look in the mirror. That's what Florence Nightingale says, right? So what do you think he did next? He hobbled over to look in the mirror. Oh, the wailing. Oh, the crying. I tried. John, it's okay. It was no use. He was too upset to be helped. I started to get wobbly. I could do this, but maybe I could use some expert help. I called, my voice quivering. Mrs. Williamson? Johnny's bleeding. And before I finished the sentence, I'll be right there. And she was, from 2 miles away in 3 minutes. And for about 3 more hours in the ER, as poor Johnny got broken glass taken out of his face and stitches put in. She held his hand and calmed him down and cheered him up. She said to me, "Good job." Suddenly, it really was going to be okay. She does that with that beautiful smiling twinkle in her eye. She had us over for meals after that, and she checked on us every day to make sure we were okay. She'd say, "Good job, you're doing well." Each day until our folks returned. She does that. How many other lucky souls in this town are that lucky to know her expert caring and that twinkle in her eye? Only God knows.
My turn.
And then
There are many ways to summarize the many treasures that Ruth gives. Her musical feats, marvels, can be summarized this way. Ruth's music fills the needs of others as a donation, a discipline, a merriment, a miracle medicine, a house party, a therapy, a rite, and a homily.
cheering us all on, knowing great loss, still spreading faith, hope, love with the song in her heart, leading us to a bit of divinity, as if to say, you can do this. Maybe that's where the great mystery we call God is. Perhaps it is the twinkle in her eye. We treasure you, Mom Williamson.
I'm glad we don't have to rehearse all those things because it would be another few hours. But I have been thinking, what is it that makes, known Ruth close to 50 years, when she does something, there's a sense, this is done right. And you know how many things there are. It got me to thinking, you know, the old saying that says, if it's worth doing well, if it's worth doing, it's worth doing well. And I'll bet you know many other jokes about that. If it's worth doing well, let someone else do it. It got me to thinking about one of the things that I treasure about Ruth is the sense, this is the best it can be. She does everything excellently. And then it got me thinking about people of excellence and what do they do? Those of you who play piano know how many hours you put in for practice, and we'll just take that as a given because you know all about practice. But then these other things that are done, I'm thinking of day out. The time you put in, not just to play there, but to plan out. What do the people need? What would they like? How could I make it better? It seems like that thought goes on with everything she does. How could I make it better? How could I make it memorable for them? And it struck me there is, she's in the Bible. Did you know there is a chapter in Proverbs that is Ruth, not the book of Ruth, the one that says, this is a woman of excellence. And they don't say living treasure, but we know that's what it is. The one thing she doesn't do is spin linen thread and make linen fabric. That is one thing I don't think you do. All the rest. This would be somebody who looks carefully around her community and says, I can make them safer, I can make them happier, I can bring beauty here, and then she does it. And there are many ways to do it, and we've heard from other living treasures, or the people who love them, how many ways there are to make it that way. But to bring everything to the sense, this was done well. I've come to know that Ruth spends as much time planning and thinking and preparing, maybe more, than when she executes it by giving programs and so forth. And I think that's the hidden part that nobody sees, and nobody counts up those hours of thinking, how could I prepare for it? There were two things that stood out in that chapter. I was going to say two, even such a thing as, I'm very interested in this, she's had some dear dogs who were beautifully trained. Well, you know that doesn't happen without effort. And the kind of effort that you do sporadically doesn't do it. And so I watched her. Why, you could say she trains them doggedly. And they are well-behaved dogs who understand exactly what a dog does. I am so thankful for knowing somebody who is beyond me, but helps me to see I could do it better. And maybe we all can do that. There's two things that I think are in that chapter that I just love. One of them is a phrase that is so quaint. She does not eat the bread of idleness. And I think that would be one of the things that sets her apart. And the other one, you all know. Her children rise up and call her blessed. And so do we all.
Marilyn Stevens did not introduce herself, but this is Marilyn Stevens, who has done the calligraphy for Living Treasures. Thank you, Marilyn.
Hello, my name is Ken. I can truthfully say I am her favorite son. I have 2 sisters and 7 female cousins. So what I wanted to say and what I realized listening to all this was that I wanted to thank my mother and my father both for instilling in me and my sisters and everyone they meet the values of giving and caring and sharing. The individual gifts are appreciated by many people. By instilling the values in others, those gifts are all magnified 1,000 times. And that's what all 3 of these treasures have done. And that's why they're living treasures. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Cynthia, and we are current staff at the Day Out, and everyone's been talking about the Day Out, so we want to actually talk about it being there present every day. So every Wednesday, Ruth comes into the Day Out at the Senior Center, and she plays the piano and leads us in singing. She has chosen the songs very carefully based on, as you have heard, themes such as holidays, colors, animals. She's prepared all the words for us to sing and provides interesting information about the songs or the holidays. Something no one has mentioned is sometimes we get treats. She honors us on our birthdays by playing our favorite song. She says it takes a bit of practice to be ready, but it doesn't seem that way when we hear you play, because it's very natural for you to play and sing and lead, a feat in itself to do all at the same time. You finger the piano, keys in such a way that the notes lift off the piano and flow into our hearts. You accept us as we are, making us feel special You have about you a spirit of lightness and light and joy and love and goodwill and integrity. And we realize that every once in a while we may find ourselves in the presence of an angel. Such are you, Ruth. So today we honor you and say thank you.
Hi, my name is Doris, and I work with Cynthia in the Day Out. And I don't have a nice speech prepared, and I'll try to keep it brief. You have quite a fan club, Ruth. I just want to echo the thought that you make us all feel special every Wednesday when you come in. I had thought about doing a recording of the singing because it's just so fun to hear the seniors sing without being embarrassed, or there's so many that are hearing impaired and they may be 3 or 4 verses ahead, and it's really quite fun to hear the joy in the room. You make us all feel special. I love the way you honor us on our birthdays. And I know I stump you with some really out there songs like Cheeseburger in Paradise. But you still make it fun. We all look forward to you coming every Wednesday, and you are a treasure to our program. Thank you for who you are, Ruth.
My name is Valerie Voles Rosenthal, and I also don't have a speech prepared, but I first met Ruth as a middle schooler who was part of the Bethlehem Lutheran Choir. I was friends with Paul Horpedahl on the video, and we met Ruth because all of us kids that lived in White Rock would meet her at the corner of La Vista or Grand Canyon and the highway, and she would pick us up in her van and drive us up to the church for rehearsal. I think there must have been 8 at least of us that would ride up every week. And then over time, as Paul said, we learned musicals, and we learned several of them, and they were full-on productions, at least an hour long, I think sometimes with an intermission with a full band, orchestra music. You know, we had electric guitars, we had drums, and it was a pretty big production. Keep in mind, this is the 1970s. There's no cell phones. There's no internet. There's no, for Ruth to make these arrangements there was no bus. We had to have people volunteer to drive us. So she had to call all these people, make arrangements with the churches, make arrangements with, housing. We slept in the basements of places. She had to do all of that. So she was a piano teacher at the time and also a music teacher. It was a full-time job to do all of this stuff. And, really, only now can we think back and think about how much time that really took, because you can't just Google something. We stayed in the basement of a church in Kayenta, I remember, with a cricket infestation. And we're all in our sleeping bags spraying the crickets with chloroseptic, trying to keep them away. As Paul mentioned, there was a side trip. We all were in southern Texas, and there was no GPS. We had to use maps. And somebody went east and hit Louisiana and realized that this was not the right place to be. The problem is, those were some of our lead actors, and they were in that car, and we still had a production to put on. Fortunately, most of the equipment was with us, and so with the sound equipment, the instruments were there. We had to wing it. The show went on. But also remember, no cell phones. We didn't even know what the phone number was where we were staying, so the car that was lost didn't have any way to let everybody know where they were at. We just had to sort of hope everybody was okay, and eventually they would make it. And so halfway through, I think, that production, they all showed up, and we were already underway, and everybody was okay, and it was all good. But as parents, you can imagine, there must have been a certain amount of panic in the adults not knowing where everybody was. Kids didn't care. We all thought it was we all thought it was fine. But what I would like to say is thank you. You know, I have children of my own. That was an experience that is really rare for us to be able to go travel with a group of kids like that. We were from Bethlehem Lutheran, but over the years, children from all churches in Los Alamos came, and by the end, I think there must have been 50 kids from 66. 66 kids with, you know, that were singing in the band, you know, just helping with all the stage equipment. It was a big production. So we have, one of the things Paul did, you may not know, is started a Facebook page for all of the Bethlehem Lutheran people, and it's been kind of fun to look through the old programs, the names, the photographs, and get in touch again. So it's been pretty fun to look at that and to remember a lot of that and just say thank you. It was a blast.
Ruth, it's your turn.
I think I should have gotten stock in the Kleenex company before I did this. Thank you so much to all of you who have spoken. Thank you, Bob. My daughters have been trying to impress on me the fact that if someone gives you a compliment, you should say thank you, not oh no, just thank you. So I would like to use my few minutes to give my thanks and appreciation to not only my friends, but those behind the scenes who have made today happen. First of all, the biggest thing that has come out from anything I've done has been friendship. And I look around and I see so many special people who have honored me with their friendship, and I thank you for that so very much. Some of the people behind the scenes, which I want to thank and express my appreciation to. Crossroads Bible Church has been just extremely generous with the use of this building, and particularly with the renovation of the Dwayne Smith Auditorium. They have been a godsend, and I think I can use that word for a church. They have been a godsend for things that were supposed to have happened at the high school and were moved to this location. So my thanks to people of Crossroads Bible Church. I would not be standing here if it were not for the nomination of Nancy and John Bartlett and the people who wrote support letters. So thank you to each of you. As Bob has said, Jim Gauthier has done the professional official photographs, and LA&B somehow finds room each year for 3 more photographs on their walls. So I'm grateful to them. A special part of this experience has been getting to know Kyle Wheeler. She has written the newspaper articles, the summary that's in the program, and she has helped me in so many other ways. Thank you, Kyle. My thanks to Jean from PAC 8. She interviewed all of us for the articles that were written, and I understand she is making a DVD of today's program. So thank you, Jean. Marilyn Stevens, who has just left the podium recently, has been doing the calligraphy for the awards, which we have received ever since this program started, almost 20 years ago. And that is very special, meaningful to me. Thank you, Marilyn. I'm blown away to have 12 of my family members here today. 2 of them I didn't even know were going to speak. I knew one was. The first one, Kim, and her husband are from Oregon. My daughter, Karen, is from Colorado. Son Ken and his wife are from Texas. And I also have my sister Evelyn and her husband from Iowa, 2 nieces from Iowa, Andrea and Pat, my brother David and his wife Tanette from Minnesota, and last but not least, my former son-in-law Casey from Oregon, who I still consider a treasured son. And I don't know if Casey remembers this, but a few years ago, he gave me some advice that I probably should have followed. He said I should keep my front door locked so that whoever's putting all that stuff on my calendar can't get in.
Listen up, girl.
So, thank you for coming. This means the world to me. I love each of you so very much. Thank you. No, I'm not done yet. No. I was thanking my family. Thank you. I can't close without saying a thank you in absentia to my husband, Ken, who had already been said that he died almost 30 years ago at the age of 53. That was 10 years exactly before the Living Treasures program began. But had it been in existence, he would have been a great candidate. He loved this community so much, and in his short life, he gave so much to the community. In the early 1960s, he was chairman of the first Los Alamos County Beautification Committee, and he would be thrilled to see now the hanging baskets that will soon be going up, the flowers around, the renovation of Ashley Pond, the sculptures, the beautiful way that this community is kept by the county. For decades, he served as treasurer of the Los Alamos Ski Club and the New Mexico Citizens for Clean Air and Water. He helped Joyce Pyburn realize her compassionate dream of founding Self-Help Incorporated, and he served as Self-Help's first president. Cheryl could not have been a Kiwanian in the 60s, 70s, and 80s because it was a men's service organization. He served in every capacity in that organization, and as a district lieutenant governor, he created 2 new Kiwanis clubs. And the list goes on. We supported each other in everything that we did, in all of our activities and our interests. And there were many things like those famous or infamous choir tours that I could not have done without him. So thank you, Ken. Finally, I'd like to say a very grateful thank you to the Living Treasures board members. In this town, which is bursting at the seams with capable, caring, and giving people, hundreds of whom deserve this honor, they have to choose only 3 each year, and they do a wonderful job. Okay, in closing, I'd just like to say that I learned so much about people from their obituaries and their memorial services. And I always think, I wish I knew all that about that person when he or she was alive. And this is exactly what the Living Treasures Board does. Yesterday, I was just plain old me. Tomorrow, I'll be just plain old me. But tomorrow, you have all made me feel special, and I am truly grateful. Thank you.
Okay, we'll finish here. Yeah, we will.
Okay.
We'll do that. There is actually a picture in there.
Wednesday people, and we love her. And she takes it with music from the Ave Maria to the Our Father to Old Black Joe. She gives us love.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Can I bend your ear for just 1 second? We do have to clear the hall by 4:45 because everything has to be cleaned and put away by then, and we're running a little long. So we just want to let people know.
Okay, okay. So, Ruth has actually stolen my thunder, and that is just fine. My duty is to thank all of these people who have contributed so much to this ceremony. Thank you, Ruth, for doing my job here tonight. And one person I would like to single out, though, is our board president, Pauline Schneider. Where are you, Pauline? There. Pauline, as you know, is moving to her native country of Canada, and so we will be losing her. Thank you so much for your service with us and to the community. Thank you. So all of these treasures are such an inspiration to us all. Now it's time to go back and have a bite to eat. I don't know if you heard what she said. We have to be out of here by about 4:45, so we've got about 35 minutes. So don't stand up yet. But go have a bite to eat, exchange stories, and feel this joy of this afternoon. Now, I would like for the living treasures and for the first 3 rows here to stand up and move out. Otherwise, they get stuck here. So I want you to stand up and move out, and then when they're moved out, then the rest of us can go. And let's give them a round of appreciation.